With Carson Soucy being injured, the Vancouver Canucks need to look to add on defense. And there's one team selling that has the perfect player. We'll get into this player and a trade proposal farther on in this episode. But before I start, I just want to say to the thousands of you that are watching that aren't subscribed, if you're enjoying this daily NHL and Canucks content, make sure to go down, hit that subscribe button. We'll be here all season long, but I'll hop right into the first topic, which is Carson Soucy's injury. Now, it did come out today via the Vancouver Canucks that defenseman Carson Soucy will be out 6 to 8 weeks with a lower body injury. Now, this is a massive blow for the Canucks in the sense of Soucy, who's been incredible in their top four. He's been anchoring down that second pairing with Tyler Myers. And in my opinion, this is one of the better second pairings in the league. You had two defensive guys, they were putting up great numbers and being defensive responsible. Tyler Myers is a guy that a lot of fans have a lot of problems with. Sometimes you love him, sometimes you hate him. But I think Carson Soucy was the perfect fit and the perfect pairing to put Myers on to kind of help with his woes, let Myers be more of an offensive guy, and to help pick up some slack. So with Soucy being out, it kind of leaves you in the sense of who do you fill this out? So this was the defense going into the game against Montreal before Soucy was injured. Hughes and Hronek are a top class line. I think they're one of the best first lines in the league. Soucy and Myers were playing great, and Ian Cole and Juleson was playing great as well. This was a lot of the reason why the Canucks were having such success. I mean, if you look at the top line alone, with Hronek and Hughes, they had an even strength goal differential of 17 to 5 and were combined for a staggering 39 points and a plus 31 rating through 15 games. So when you look at this, this is an outstanding pairing of, like I said, the top line. But like this says here, there is a possibility this may be broken up. And I know the Canucks management coaches, they were all kind of talking about this may be a line that had to break up. Now going into the next game, Quinn Hughes, Hronek were still together. Ian Cole did get bumped up with Tyler Myers, and Juleson and Friedman are the bottom pairing with Friedman just drawing into this game for the first time. Now, I do think this is fine. I think Ian Cole can come in. He can eat the top 4 minutes, but it kind of makes you think if the situation does come down of Ian Cole starts to struggle or Tyler Myers starts to struggle without Carson Soucy on this pairing, the Canucks might have to look to add. And by add, I mean add on defense. So as I said, with this pairing, I think the top one stays. If Hronek does have to get bumped down, you're fine in the sense of maybe bumping Tyler Myers up, or maybe you give it Friedman or Juleson a chance to hop in with Quinn Hughes. But you kind of get stuck in the situation if that second pairing or the third pairing starts to struggle, you need to start flipping things around. And when you start flipping things around, you have to break up this top pairing, and that's not something you want to do. Now, I know there was a lot of reports coming out that the Canucks were looking at maybe adding another left-handed defenseman or just adding a defenseman in general. There should be a video popping up somewhere on the screen right now where we did break all this down, but I think the Canucks are going to be more actively looking to add this defenseman now, with Carson Soucy being out 6 to 8 weeks. And that kind of brings you to a team that I think would have the perfect player, and the perfect player which would be Chris Tanev. Now, Chris Tanev is a guy that a lot of Canucks fans know, and with me saying Chris Tanev, I'm saying this because with the Flames start to the 2023-24 season being very slow, Craig Convoy has been shopping around several of his pending UFAs, including Noah Hannafin, Chris Tanev, Nikita Zadorov, and Elias Lindholm. He said that on a recent report that he hopes to bring back a young roster player that can make an immediate impact. Now, when you do look at Tanev, Tanev's a guy that a lot of Canucks fans know. He played a majority of his career here before he went to Calgary. And this is your stereotypical shutdown guy. He can play on your top line, your second line. He blocks shots, he can hit, and he can still put up points. You've seen one season he did put up 28 points. He did have 20 points a couple seasons, but what makes me say a guy like this fits perfectly is just last season we've seen how good a line of Hughes and Luke Schenn play together on that top pairing. So bringing a guy like Chris Tanev is just a better version of Luke Schenn. You get the shutdown guy, he's going to lay the body. He can play defense good enough that you can let Hughes do his own thing. If he wants to get on a rush, you still have Tanev back there to cover him. And I think overall, this is the guy, especially with Calgary saying they're shopping these guys. I think this is the perfect guy for the Canucks, and I think they do need to make a call on him. As I said, when you look at this a guy that can hit, block shots, doesn't turn over the puck a lot. He can steal a lot of pucks. And just overall, he is the perfect guy to run with Quinn Hughes, especially if you wanted to, say, drop Hronek down onto that third pairing. You could run Hughes, Tanev. You could run Hronek, Tyler Myers, Juleson, and Friedman. Then when it comes to the situation, if Soucy comes back, one of Juleson and Friedman comes out of the lineup, and you could run Quinn Hughes, Hronek still. You could run Soucy. You could run Tanev here, and then you still have this bottom pairing of picking one of these guys to run with Ian Cole. And I think this is the perfect situation. Now, you kind of think, what would Vancouver have to give up in a trade to get a guy like Chris Tanev? So when you look at this, I kind of did a little mock here, where Calgary has been saying they want a young guy that can get into the lineup, and here's two. So when you look at Beauvillier, he's a guy that a lot of Canucks fans are a little wishy-washy on. He's a guy that's currently buried on the fourth line, but in Calgary's view, you can look at this guy as a 26-year-old winger. He's a UFA at the end of the year. If you wanted to maybe take this guy on, flip him at deadline, or if he starts to pick things up, he is only 26. You can re-sign a guy like this. Then you look at a guy like Jet Wu. Jet Wu at the age of 23, he's a right-handed defenseman playing in the AHL right now. He's a guy with a decent bit of upside that could immediately slip into maybe the third pairing or second pairing for the Canucks. And then you have the first-round pick. Salary cap wise, this works perfectly, especially with Jet Wu being in there just to take a little more salary off, even though all his cap is in the minors. Now, if this first round pick wasn't to go out, the Canucks do have their first, third, and 2 fourths this year. Next year, they have a first, second, and a fourth. And in 2026, they have a first, second, third, and fourth. So you could get into the situation of, say, we don't want to move at this first round pick. Maybe Calgary is fine with taking a few other picks. So you look at this, it could be Beauvillier, Jet Wu, maybe a second, a third, maybe a couple fourths instead. And overall, I think this benefits both sides, where Calgary still gets a young winger, a young defenseman that can make an immediate impact into their lineup, and then still get a couple picks out of this. Now, if Beauvillier is not what they're looking for, you might look at maybe a Hoglander could be added into this trade instead of Jet Wu, or maybe instead of Beauvillier. And with Carson Soucy being out, there is enough cap to make this without getting rid of Beauvillier's contract. Maybe this is another guy you ship off for another left-handed defenseman. But at this current standpoint, I think it's just to the point that the Canucks are such a wagon. They're such a good team. They're one of the top teams in the West, one of the top teams in the NHL. This is one of the better teams they have, and I think going all in on a couple defensemen. Tanev's a guy that's a UFA. You can re-sign him. He's been in Vancouver. He knows the system well for the most part, because you have a couple coaches in between. But he knows this team. He knows a lot of the management. So he could come and make an immediate impact. You get Soucy back. Maybe you flick Beauvillier and another pick in a trade for a left-handed defenseman or another right-handed where they could play with Ian Cole. But I think this is the year the Canucks have to go in. They have to make the impact, re-sign a guy like Pettersson, and just make a push for the Stanley Cup. What's your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think this might be a situation where I think the Canucks are doing better than they should be doing, and a trade like this would be stupid? Do you think a guy like Tanev fits in perfectly to play with Quinn Hughes, or maybe with Carson Soucy when he's back in a couple of weeks? Or do you think the Canucks should just stand where they're sitting right now and just hope these pairings kind of gel? Let us know in the comments, but talking about comments, we'll get into everyone's favorite topic of the day. Sorry about that once again, which is a comment from Jude. I'm sorry I can't pronounce that, but he said Peck's name was something that keeps coming up. It makes sense. Look how beneficial Soucy and Cole have been. Get it done, Alvin. So this was from the recent video that I was talking about. He's a left-handed defenseman out of Columbus. I think he's making just under $2 million. He's still relatively young. I think he signed for 3 years, which I think he'd be perfect. He's another shutdown defenseman. Lays a lot of hits. Had an ugly plus-minus last year, but overall it was a Columbus team that wasn't playing well, so I don't look at plus-minus too much. But what's your thoughts on this? Do you think the Canucks need to go and add 2 defensemen, 1 defenseman? Would you like to get rid of Beauvillier's contract if it meant getting a guy like Chris Tanev back? Just let us know in the comments what's your thoughts on all this. And while you're down there, make sure to like and subscribe, and take care.